Welcome back for another episode of Into the Greenwood, Splitting Arrows. And this time we're going to be viewing a film I didn't think we'd be able to cover. I didn't know there were any DVD releases of this film until I started shopping around some used bookstores and happened to find one. This movie is The Son of Robin Hood from 1958. It is directed by George Sherman, written by George W. George, which is a pretty great name there. Just kind of like that, George W. George. And George F. Slavin.
So many Georges.
Yes. So this was a movie brought to us by George, and George, which might be the most interesting bit of trivia about the movie, because I could find nothing else looking around. It stars David Hedison, June Laverick, David Farrar, Marius Goring, Philip Friend, Delphi Lawrence, George Coloris, and George Woodbridge. Well, that gives us two more Georges. We've got a total of 5 Georges.
Man.
It's Georges all the way down.
And what was the actress's name? June?
June.
Yeah.
Yes, June Laverick. Yes, so in case this happens to be your first episode of Into the Greenwood, welcome. Odd choice, but every episode is somebody's first episode, I suppose, at least potentially. And we're going to be watching this film, which none of us have seen before, and then giving our thoughts, opinions, running through a few questions that we have predetermined, and assessing where it falls in the kind of scale of Robin Hood films, or in this case, the sort of subgenre of Child of Robin Hood films. This will be the third in our subgenre of Child of Robin Hood films. The other two were The Bandit of Sherwood Forest and The Rogues of Sherwood Forest.
At least this doesn't have the setting in the name.
Right. Joining me again is Richard Hopkins-Lutz.
Hello.
As well as Maryanne Papke, or Momo.
Hi. I'm Thad's sister.
Yes. my kid sister, who also is Rick's wife. And I'm grateful that they're willing to join me for this. Any thoughts about this movie? Any expectations? Anything you're looking forward to in regards to this really obscure film?
Well, looking at the character list, I'm only seeing, 2 of the merry men listed? Little John and Alan Adale?
Yes, both played by Georges, that George Coloris and George Woodbridge.
Yes.
2 of our 5 Georges.
So far, I will say that the son of or child of Robin Hood movies have failed to impress.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm willing to give any of these movies a chance.
I did see a spoiler for this movie when Thad sent me the IMDb page for it. It kind of gave away the twist.
There is a major twist in the film Son of Robin Hood that is all over all of the advertising and marketing that one can find.
It actually was not necessarily given away on the DVD box itself.
I mean, the box art hinted at it.
It did, but the back of the box, the description was just saying, the merry men find this son of Robin, but there's a twist.
Right. Well, we'll save that twist along with all of the other spoilers after we get back from the break.
Yes.
I have it. I don't know what the twist is, so.
Oh, all right.
It will be Shyamalan-esque.
Yes. Well, I expect the twist will happen fairly early. Now, because the first of this Child of Robin Hood series was pretty abysmal, that being The Bandit of Sherwood Forest, starring Cornell Wilde.
Not good.
I do have expectations of this film at least clearing that low bar.
You hope. You hope.
I hope.
But, they're man, I don't know what studio produced this or what, but is this the one? I know there's at least one Robin Hood movie that's a Hammer film. So.
This one wasn't Hammer. IMDb is not actually telling me who made it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was one of the major studios. So, I mean, who knows? Because it could have terrible production quality, but a good script, or vice versa, or anywhere in between. I've seen plenty of movies that are perfectly watchable movies, but okay.
It was produced by Argo Film Productions and then distributed through 20th Century Fox.
Okay, so yeah, who knows? I don't know. I'm going into it with an open mind. Who knows? Might be awesome.
Fingers crossed.
My fingers are crossed that I won't want to projectile vomit while watching it. That's pretty much about as far as my fingers crossed, or that it won't be offensive, or that it won't have offensive sexual harassment scenes.
Right. That being
low bar of the Bandit of Sherwood Forest there.
Right. That being the key part of Bandit of Sherwood Forest that made it problematic in particular. All right. As I said before, the movie is so obscure, I didn't even think I was going to be able to find a copy of it. It wasn't in my initial release schedule of episodes to cover even.
Bonus episode, peeps.
That's right. Okay.
Let's go watch it.
Yep. We'll see you after the film. So we are back from watching Son of Robin Hood. Rick, you predicted that you had a guess as to what the twist of the film was. Were you correct?
I was correct that Robin Hood did not have a son. He had a daughter.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
Yes, they are alluded to the child of Robin Hood early in the film as being one Deering Hood, which I thought was an interesting name and apparently gender neutral enough that everybody assumed that this fellow who shows up is Deering Hood, son of Robin, when it of course turns out to be Deering Hood, the daughter of Robin.
I wasn't aware of Deering as a name, as a first name, but hey.
Yeah.
I guess that makes it gender neutral by being, new and not a name that anybody had used before.
By virtue of being novel.
Yes.
Well, so let's start with her. What did you all? Well, let's start with the movie. What did you think of the movie, Momo?
It was better than expected, given your introduction that this was, a nothing movie nobody had ever heard of.
An obscurity.
Obscure movie with, it pops up on our thing as having, 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. And, but no, there were some interesting plot points. And
it was a short movie, and I think that helped it. Yeah. If it was much longer, it would have plotted. But it was overall pretty enjoyable.
Yeah. Oh, no, I enjoyed the movie. Despite it's not a great movie.
Nope.
But it is watchably good. Like, I didn't want my time back at the end, which I definitely kind of wanted in some of these.
It suffers a lot from 50s sexism.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where, of course, the titular character is really just the daughter of Robin Hood, but we can't have, a woman really being an action star. So there's this other young man who's really kind of more the action hero who has to play the part of the son of Robin Hood because, we can't have a daughter of Robin Hood leading us. Don't be ridiculous.
So
they literally say that.
Yes. Yeah, I think it might have been exactly those words even. Yeah, to very briefly recap the plot of this movie, it starts with Robin Hood himself having been dead for 10 years. They repeat this several times at the beginning. Apparently, all of the outlaws of Sherwood are still outlaws, hanging out in Sherwood, and have just kind of been moping around for the past 10 years since Robin has died.
I mean, like you do.
the sinister Duke Simon de Roche, who's entirely fictional, not a real historical figure, is plotting to take over the throne, which is apparently being held for a young prince in the hands of a regent who is loyal to the prince. One leaps to the assumption that this is kind of inspired by the real-life Henry III, who assumed the crown after the death of King John, and like this would line up with the kind of normal Robin Hood timelines, but they never say who the king is, and the regent they have is Robert, Earl of Chester, not William Marshall, who the real regent was. So it's really just kind of this fictionalized, loosely inspired by history sort of setup. But anyway, evil, power-hungry Duke is gathering together a lot of allies. He's going to lead some kind of rebellion and take over England.
Yeah, he has a couple of other nobles who have pledged 3,000 troops to him, and he's trying to get, was it Robert, to sign an abdication.
Yeah. Get the regent to abdicate. Even though he's getting these armies of thousands of men, he is somehow extremely concerned about this small band of old men living in Sherwood Forest.
Hey, man, if Avatar The Last Airbender taught me anything, it's do not underestimate the elderly. They all know each other, and they're all really
The
powerful.
old men, led by Little John, get word that the child of Robin Hood, who none of them ever knew, a Deering Hood, has been living in Spain and is willing to come and help act as their leader, pick up where their father left off, and the merry men are then betrayed. They are attacked. Little John escapes, but many of them are killed, including Will Scarlet and others. And the Duke's men know about the son of Robin coming to England, and they try to intercept him on the docks, and they see this handsome young suave man arrive, and they assume that he is the son of Robin. They try to arrest him. He resists. Another stranger jumps to his aid. It turns out, of course, that the stranger is, in fact, this Deering Hood. And after a bit of banter back and forth, various identities are revealed. We learn that this young man who appeared is the brother of the regent, who has by this point been betrayed and captured by this evil duke, and he agrees to join the merry men and Deering Hood and pose as the son of Robin Hood to help rally them together and lead them against this evil duke. The merry men are attacked again. They're clearly being betrayed by somebody from within. They get away, but they learn that there is a Marquis
Duval.
Marquis Duval, who was going to come and visit with the Duke, and he was the one who was supposed to bring some troops, but they realize the Duke doesn't know who he is. So
and they supposedly capture him, but you never see this happen.
Right.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering
confusing.
because they enact this plan to impersonate the Marquis, but it didn't seem to ever be addressed how they knew that the real Marquis wasn't going to come and.
There's like a line when when they make up this plan of like the Marquis Duval who you've captured. Da 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 da.
Yeah,
it's
said.
Okay.
Oh, they captured a guy.
Right.
Yeah, I even missed that.
And it means that this Jamie fellow's guise as the son of Robin Hood with Deering as his page is really maintained like for a single scene. And then they jump into this whole other guise with him being the Marquis Duval and Deering being the Marquis's wife. And they show up at the Duke's castle. Various intrigues ensue, the most prescient of them being liaisons between the Duke's salacious sister and Sir Jamie in the guise of the Marquis, who apparently had a reputation that preceded him as a bit of a rake. But this leads to a very important secret passageway that she was using for her lovers, which then, of course, gets used for going in and out of the castle really multiple times.
Which, by the way, it was not so much a secret, because it seemed like everybody in the castle knew about it, including Dorchester, her beau.
Yeah, her fiance and ally of Duke de Roche. Yeah, open secret. As you said at one point, like she was very concerned about her reputation, but everybody seemed to know her reputation anyway.
Yeah, like there's that little conversation between the two ladies and the ladies at court where they totally just can't bitch
yes,
her.
There was this exposition gossip scene between these two unnamed ladies at the first feast that we have, where they tell us all of the rumors about both the Marquis's habits and Lady Sylvia's.
Yes. And not just her habits, but her intentions.
Well,
by the way, yeah, she gives him that look.
Right away. Yes. So there's a good bit of back and forth between the palace and Sherwood Forest. Mostly on the part of Sir Jaime. He is really presented as our leading man and primary heroic figure. Eventually, he gets captured, reunites with his brother. The person who's been betraying the Merry Men gets revealed, and Deering finally gets to ride into action and help rescue the Merry Men, and then lead the charge back into the castle, where the regent is freed and all of the bad guys are defeated, and what was really a fairly spectacular sword fight, although mostly between the Sir Jaime and the Duke. And and then the monarchy is secured, and everybody in England lives happily ever after.
Long live the king!
That's the real important thing about these stories of outlaws, is that at the end we establish the monarchy is secure.
We establish the dominance of the Plantagenet royalty. Because really, that's what Robin Hood's about.
So really our primary main character is the false son of Robin Hood, this Sir Jaime of Chester. And Rick, at one point you made a comment about how you kind of wanted to hate him but couldn't quite.
Yeah, well, because he's sexist in that 50s male character way. He can be super smarmy, but he's not utterly dislikable, because he's not really a bad guy. He kind of comes on a little strong to Deering.
Definitely.
Oh,
yeah, he definitely does.
After he discovers that she's a woman, she has to literally hold him off at sword point. And props to her for doing so.
Mm-hmm. But then later on, he does, he teases her, but he does back off and goes and sleeps in a couch, which you kind of get the impression that's what he was intending the whole time.
Right.
Because there's this thing where there's this scene where they're supposed to be man and wife, so they've been stuck in a chamber with one bed, and it's time to go to bed, and you could tell it's meant to be playful.
Right.
The problem is that the actor himself is not actually strong enough to make it charming.
Well, and not just that, but that, this 50s idea of a charming fight between them, like, it was not charming. It
was kind of creepy.
It was creepy. It was off-putting. And then, like, the worst part of it was when he went to bed on the couch and she was alone in the bed by herself with curtains drawn around it. She had a coy little smile. Like, that it felt so ungenuine.
We all groaned. All of us. You're just like, you were like, don't smile.
Yeah, I wrote down a couple of the particular chestnuts of his. A beautiful woman always has a purpose. Men will follow a pair of shapely legs anywhere. Why not into battle?
Oh, God. It's so cringy.
Yeah. That was really rough. He initially didn't want to help the Merry Men. He wasn't, like, in it for the cause until he found out that his brother was the one who was taken prisoner, and that his kind of cause of rescuing his brother aligned with their purpose. And then he's like, yeah, okay, sure, I'll help you. But then he did throw himself into it.
He did.
And he rode to their rescue even before that. Little John and Deering are accosted by some soldiers, and he rides right up and like chases the soldiers off, and he is a kind of heroic man of action in the way you kind of want to see. The actor wasn't quite as charming as you wanted.
He wasn't, but
50s sexism really hurt what charm he might have had.
He wasn't, but I liked him better than Cornel Wilde. Distinct. Yeah. Like he topped that bar. Not that it's hard to step over that limbo bar. But I mean, like I said, I wanted to dislike him, but I couldn't. I didn't like him.
Yeah.
But I didn't dislike him. I was just overall kind of left lukewarm.
Yeah, there was at no point that we were really satisfied with the love story.
No.
But it
didn't. It was more of a kind of groan and deep sigh than actual retch.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And and he had a very touching scene reuniting with his brother. We are commenting on the fighting scene with the Duke at the very end. That was excellent. He was dynamic. He had a bit of insouciance that could be nice at times. He worked.
He did. He kind of...
Yeah, and he was, overall a better actor than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The actor is Dave Hedison, by the way, for this role.
Yeah, he was serviceable. That's the word I'm going to use. Is he was serviceable in the part. Like, I would have liked to have seen... And I don't want to bash the actor, actually, because I think some of it was the actor, but I think a fair amount of it was just the way that the character was written.
Yeah, I mean, I really just wish that, Deering could have had more of that action role. That, he had this really great fight at the end with Darash. It was long, it was lengthy, it was good, but during this whole scene fighting in the castle courtyard, Deering, she gets her little moments, but just as if she were, one of the quirky side characters.
Yeah. And she's even the one you do get on the DVD box. I was really expecting her to be more the main character.
Yeah, I was too. And I had high hopes for her at the beginning because she was really doing her best of being really indignant of what do you mean you not letting me be myself? And
yeah, she was pissed.
Yeah, it was Little John's suggestion. Oh, let's have this other strange guy pretend to be the son of Robin Hood, because men will follow him and not you, because you're a woman. And she's like, the hell?
What? We are, by the way, barely paraphrasing that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, and they did not know who Jamie was at all. They never found out. Did they ever find out exactly who he was?
They find out that he's a crusader who's back after being wounded.
And they knew that they had mutual friends.
Yeah,
there was this one squire who had been a friend of the Merry Men, who was also a friend of his. So it was kind of there's this guy who's dead now because you were friends with him, that sort of vouches for you.
Right, but in that same scene where Little John is saying, hey, let's have you be Robin Hood, he pointedly refused to actually give them his name.
Oh yeah, Little John just jumped on that right away. I mean, he had ridden up and saved him earlier from those guards, so you could see why Little John would be well disposed towards him, but it was very sudden.
It felt very like introducing a new member to your D&D party. You seem like a trustworthy fellow.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I did like with Deering Hood, this was June Laverick's role. The first time you see her is when this other guy, Jamie, is being accosted by some guards, and he's, flippant enough with them and refusing to reveal his identity, which is building up the suspense of ooh, is this the guy who's the son of Robin Hood? And they attack him. She just jumps into his defense. She's comes in from off screen. You have no idea who this person is.
Yeah, you actually see her jump down from a balcony onto a hay bale onto a guard.
Yeah. And later on, she is just saying, like, yeah, I didn't know who you were, why these guys were attacking you. I just saw 4 men attacking you and didn't like those odds. So, like, I liked her right off the bat. Like, bam, that's a good attitude. That's, like, she has that sense of fairness and, like, good, I want to be dynamic. I'm going to have action. And then it was so disheartening that she got sidelined for so much of the film.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, you know, when she did ride out to rescue the Merry Men, she put on a Robin Hood costume with the little brown leather jerkin and a little green pointed cap, and she looked awesome.
Yeah, no, it was actually it looked really good. It was an amazing little outfit. You see it for all of them. You see it fairly little. It's only at the end.
Yeah. I guess it was. Yeah, it was a pretty cute outfit though. She had like a different kind of boy's outfit in the beginning, but
yeah, it was like this blue, this powder blue.
Well, no, even before that, in her first scene.
That's right.
Yeah, she had like just kind of breeches, and she had a green hood on, which I also thought was a nice touch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then she did a page boy costume at one point when she was pretending to be the page of Sir Jamie's, Deering hood, which was a moderately more convincing page costume than Maid Marian wore in the last film.
I mean, I guess.
Moderate.
I mean, yeah.
Speaking of Maid Marian, though, something that all 3 of the Child of Robin Hood films have had in common is that there has never been a single mention of who the mother is.
Nope. None. Zero.
Yeah.
Mom not important. They popped out a kid. What are you talking?
Yeah,
what do you care?
It is the son of Robin Hood, not the son of Robin and Maryanne.
Yeah.
She never matters, and it's so frustrating to me. The romance between Robin and Maryanne is often such a big part of Robin Hood movies. It's such a well-known part of the story. And yet, when they're telling the story that we want to have a continuation, we want to have something that it matters who Robin Hood's child is and what they're like, the mother doesn't even get mentioned.
No.
Not once.
I mean,
that's 0 for 3 now.
Yeah. Well, it's some of that is just when, these are all mid-century movies, and let's face it, female characters are often an afterthought.
I was hoping this one might be different since it was the daughter of Robin Hood, but nope, not even here.
No. I would have liked to have seen her maybe talk about her mother a minute.
Yeah.
She barely even talks about her dad. She's one thing where she quotes some line, some saying he supposedly always said. Once the arrow is flown from the bow, it must hit its target or something like that. And it's like, oh, okay, that's okay. Well, it's kind of shameful, the utter and complete dismissing of female characters.
It's frustrating also that there's very little that has to do with the actual relationship between Robin and his kids. This is also the second time where the child of Robin apparently just grew up in some other place, not really raised by Robin. We have no idea why she was in Spain. But apparently she was very international. She mentioned speaking Spanish and Italian and French. She seemed like a really interesting character. She was very dynamic. She hated, playing the role of this Marquis's wife and having to wear the dresses that meant she couldn't be jumping off of things and riding horses. She didn't like the restrictiveness of the women's clothing of the time. But then nothing more came of that. We just but now you're in a dress, so now you don't get to be dynamic.
Yep. And it's not until she puts back on tights that she gets to be dynamic again.
Yeah. How about our...
just on the subject of the female characters in the movie, I did want to mention again Lady Sylvia, that we did appreciate her. She was, this noble woman, but she knew what she wanted. And she took it.
Yes, Lady Sylvia, the sister of the primary villain, Duke Simon de Roche, and who was affianced to one of his allies. But was really just interested in her own passions and desires, and had them set up to do so. Had this whole secret love nest for herself built that she would lead her conquests into.
Yeah, it was pretty great. Like her maid would just knock the door, just be like, don't say anything. Follow this way.
Yeah, very mysterious. The lady waiting. Don't say anything. Follow me.
Well, and then she like leads him into
the bowels of the castle.
Bowels of the castle, like this dungeon, this like cave. I'm like, oh, I guess she's not leading him to Lady Sylvia's room.
Yeah, right?
I was like, this
into
is something...
these tunnels underneath the moat.
This is something more interesting. And then we go outside and, oh no, it is Lady Sylvia. She's just got this, like, love nest outside.
Well, what did you call it? A nookie nest? Yeah, like it's literally, you get out to the tunnel, you go 20, 30 feet, and then on your left, there's this little nookie nest, and it's got like a table with a tablecloth and like a nice little pillow place and candles, and she's just
chalices of wine.
It's just like, you're just like, you know what? I'm going to live my best life.
Yeah. And then when it was clear at the end that her admission that she had a liaison with somebody would save their life, she was not immediately ready to do so until Deering sort of played upon her vanity and convinced her to.
Oh, yeah.
But then she just did.
Yeah.
And at the end, Deering's like, hey, she helped us in the end. Let's let her go.
Yeah.
You know, she's all right.
No harm, no foul.
Yeah.
No, it was appreciable.
It was.
And she was an interesting enough character who seemed very self-possessed. I think that was the quality about her that seemed so good. And made her feel a lot like her brother. They felt a lot like siblings in that they were very commanding, very self-possessed. They had very similar qualities, this kind of stern, striking features.
Yeah, they were both good characters.
One thing I did actually appreciate about her was that she was self-possessed, but she didn't seem overly petty. Mm-hmm. Like, because that's the thing you see a lot in self-possessed characters. So there's a scene where Deering, in the guise of the Marquis's wife, who I don't even know if that character got a first name, comes, he's thrown into the dungeon because he kills Duke's Chief Hench, what's his name? Dorchester.
Oh, his ally.
His ally. I'd consider him Chief Henchman.
He had another Chief Henchman.
He had another Chief Henchman.
Okay. The guard
his ally. But anyway, who is her fiance, who is Sylvia's fiance, and they have this back and forth, but there's not that catty pettiness.
No.
There's just the whole like, oh, but he killed my fiance, and but yeah, I will say though that seeing Deering just play her in that, like, totally played her ego to get what she wanted in that scene. That was actually really satisfying.
Yeah, it felt it was a good scene.
And the other thing I'll say about Lady Sylvia, while she was portrayed as like an extremely sexual person, like as then sex was something that motivated her, she was not like vamped up.
No.
She was not played up in like a way that was meant to titillate the audience.
No, that's true. She wasn't like all like. Oh,
I never felt like she was serving the male gaze or anything. For as gross and creepy as the movie could be in other ways, it kind of wasn't with her, which is where you would kind of most expect it to be. Yeah. And in fact, you would almost expect it to be, there would be some kind of moralizing with her, for being a bad girl who was motivated by sex. But no, it was mostly just like that. Yeah, that's just kind of who she is. And at the end, it was just treated as being all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, or at least something that nobody made a deal about, right? At the very least.
Yeah.
Right. I do want to touch on, because we've touched on this in other episodes, that the sets and costumes were pretty good.
Hang on, before you get to that, since we're talking about the characters in main cast, I also want to make sure we touch on our primary villain, Duke Simon de Roche. So I tried to look up de Roche from that time period, and there was a Peter de Roche, who was definitely not this character. It was a bishop who I believe was loyal to Henry III, and has an interesting crossover component with an earlier episode of the podcast, the one where I interviewed Richard Firth Green, and he told the story of the butterfly bishop. And the real-life Peter de Roche, according to legend, once got lost while out hunting and encountered King Arthur and feasted in Camelot and asked for proof of this wonderful, or perhaps not Camelot, in Avalon, feasted with Arthur in Avalon, and asked for proof of having had this wondrous encounter, and was given the ability to open his hands and summon forth a butterfly, which he was able to repeat ever after, and was known as the Butterfly Bishop.
Rock on.
So that's the real-life de Roche from the rough time period, had this legend around him and was known as a very holy man. This is Simon de Roche, the entirely fictional duke, who was played very commandingly by David Ferrer. And I looked up David Ferrer. He was the lead in Black Narcissus, perhaps the role that he is most well remembered for, and was really known for his striking presence. Director Michael Powell, this is reading from Wikipedia, Director Michael Powell once spoke of his handsome appearance and distinctive violet eyes and his exceptional timing in films, which he did seem to have in this film. According to one obituary, he was particularly adept at conveying the weaknesses and human qualities in figures of authority and intelligence, and he could be considered an early exponent of anti-hero roles, and was one of Britain's most popular stars for a time.
I will say I did enjoy his villain in this. I thought de Roche was the villain in this case was better played than the main male lead.
Oh yeah, he had a commanding presence. He seemed clever, which was one of the things that was nice to see in a villain. Sinister without being too over the top.
Yeah, no mustache twirling, scenery chewing.
Yeah, none of they foiled my plans and now I hate them so much. And he never got flustered.
Yeah, he never got flustered. He was a person who's driven, knows what he wants, knows how to get it, and is willing to take those steps.
Yeah, and clearly a villain in that he was ambitious and wanted to seize power. Clearly a villain in that he was willing to torture his prisoners to extract information from them. But you never got the idea that he was especially sadistic or insane or anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, he liked torturing people, but...
Well, I've got really, he seemed like he was willing to torture it. Not that he was...
Well, there was, a comment that he liked it. But, yeah, I guess, like I said, you don't see him, glorifying it.
Yeah, the scene where it came up was really just as a loyalty test. But I didn't...
No.
You stepped out when he tortured the regent, but it was very brief.
It was very brief. But they didn't, make it weird.
Jabbed him with a hot poker, and that was about it. It wasn't protracted. And he didn't. You never got the sense that he was delighting in it.
No. And it was more like I said, he's driven. He sees it as a means to an end. Yeah, well, and the other thing is he was also very honest in his motivations. He's just I want to be king.
Yep.
Nope. Oh, the young king is an idiot. Blah blah blah. Nope. I just want to be king.
I want to be king. I'm going to seize power and do it. I see an opening. I'm going to do it.
Going to do it.
Yep. Oh, there's the regent is hanging out with these outlaws in Sherwood. I'm going to go capture him. If I need to extract information from him, I'll torture him. Yep.
That's how it is. Dip.
Yeah. No, I thought he was very effective and very well written as a villain and well acted.
Very well acted. I enjoyed it. The performance.
Rick, you wanted to say something about the costumes and sets?
Oh, I was going to say that I thought the sets were pretty good. The sets... Really, actually, I thought were better than I expected for something out of
the castle scenes, at least.
The castle scenes, the map paintings were not good, but the sets themselves were good. Like the secret tunnel, I thought looked really good. The castle parts looked really good, and I didn't recognize them from other movies. I'm not saying they were built for this, but whatever. The costumes didn't seem to be... they weren't especially elaborate, but they didn't seem to be recycled from the previous Robin Hood movies, so that gets it a point, or at least half a point in my mind. Sorry, there was just that streak where we kept seeing the same stuff from the 38 get recycled. And as we mentioned, the little Robin Hood outfit they put Deering Hood in towards the end was adorable. It was a very cute outfit. And I don't mean that in like a,
Well, it helps that she's a very petite woman.
Yes.
And so...
But it was well cut.
You put her in a cute little outfit. It's cute.
Yeah, it's cute. Yeah, it's cute. With her little, like...
Bi-cocket.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it was like half the length of, like, a regular one.
Yeah. And the bi-cocket being the Robin Hood hat. The classic pointed, peaked Robin Hood hat.
Yeah. But, I thought that, like, it gave it a slightly higher feeling production quality than I think the script slightly deserved. But, overall, like, it actually did help the movie. I did also want to touch on the scoring of this movie, which I thought was atrocious.
Do you want to talk about that now or when we get the low points?
Yeah, we can talk about it at low points.
All right. Let's run through our other questions, though. So there wasn't a ton of archery. Deering makes a few decent shots, but there really is only a single contender, I think, for best feat of archery, which is when, from horseback, she shoots down a messenger falcon.
Yes.
And I thought that was superb. It was nicely done. We had seen something similar done in a previous movie, so it didn't have an aspect of uniqueness, but it was well kind of set up. And it was a kind of earned action shot.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that it doesn't come out of nowhere. She is established as a crack shot throughout the whole movie. That she is a good shot with a bow, and the equal of her father. It's actually
right. That is something Little John says, and she shoots this one guard who's climbed up a tree to scout for them, and it's a perfectly good shot. There's nothing that seemed impressive about it in particular, but it elicited that comment and helped establish that, yep, she's a fine archer.
Yeah, one of the things I liked about the shooting the bird down scene was that this was one of her most independent acting scenes. She was literally all by herself in the scene, on her way back to the Merry Men, and noticed the falcon in the air and was like, oh, I need to shoot that down. There we go. Right,
and it was crucial for the plot. That this is what saved the Merry Men, because otherwise the bad guys would have learned where they were, would have been able to ambush them, would have foiled all of the hero's plans. So it was an impressive feat of archery and an important way of helping her be able to contribute to the story and the plot. All right, so again, I think there has to only be one real contender for best bit of swashbuckling action, although there was a decent amount in the film. I wasn't unimpressed with the level of swashbuckling throughout.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few bits.
I made a note right at the beginning that first fight on the dock where he kicks over a barrel and he's fighting two men at once with swords. It was pretty good.
Yeah. No, I wrote dockyard fight scene also at the beginning. It was pretty decent when they're kind of running through the courtyard and he uses a spear and places it between two battlements as a way of like getting from one to the next. There was a decent amount of people jumping onto horseback and jumping on two people who were riding on horses. There was some quality action shots throughout the movie.
There was. The one I would actually pick is actually in that end sword fight between him and Darash.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking of when I said that there's only one real contender, though. Because that was a pretty epic sword fight.
It really, seriously, I have to say.
And by sword fight, I mean sword, chair, poleaxe,
bastard sword.
They literally use 5 different weapons over the course of this fight scene.
Yeah, and they go through a fireplace.
They go through a fireplace. They go over some tables.
Yeah,
No, it was impressive.
It was probably the best end fight scene I've seen in one of these Robin Hood movies since the 38.
Oh, absolutely.
Errol Flynn.
Absolutely, without question.
Yeah. Like, it was excellent.
And I think the Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone fight it beats it out, but that's because that is such an excellently shot fight.
Yeah.
And because the actors are such quality sword fighters themselves, and there's so much character and drama in between those two personalities.
Yeah,
and that wasn't really there in the same way.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, comparing it to that fight, because I haven't seen, as many Robin Hood movies as these guys have, but I have definitely seen the Errol Flynn Adventures of Robin Hood. And that's what I was going to say. The fight between Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone, you have these moments of character, even if it's just like this stare of Basil Rathbone is like staring at, Errol Flynn. There was none of that.
There's really an intensity between the characters and the actors that is carried throughout that fight, and it's not being done by stunt doubles at any point. You can really see both Flynn and Rathbone throughout that fight. Beautifully shot, and I don't need to wax about another movie.
Yeah,
but this movie had a really great fight scene. It was dynamic. It was exciting.
It had a good fight scene, but it was not a fight between the characters. It was just a really good choreographed scene.
Yeah. Well, and there's definitely parts where you can tell where one or both of the actors is not the one doing that scene. Mm-hmm. Whereas, again, not to compare it to 38 Errol Flynn, that one is all Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone. And yeah, it honestly, at this point, it's like comparing Jimmy, who's down at the local boxing rink, who's a really good boxer, to Iron Mike Tyson in his prime or something like that. But no, it is actually a really good fight scene, and in some ways, I will say I felt it made up for a lot of some of the other shortcomings of the movie. It kind of redeemed it, and while it doesn't have that intensity, and you don't feel that kind of personal hatred between the two characters in the scene, they definitely do have a beef, and you definitely feel it. But this one is much more that kind of like, you get the sense that Sir Jamie is doing this because this man is trying to overthrow the throne, overthrow the king, not because he has necessarily a personal hatred of him.
Well, this was the person who had imprisoned and tortured his brother.
Yeah, but I didn't.
But it didn't come out enough.
It didn't come out. Yeah. Well, and that's going to lead into one of the questions that we're going to have here in a second, which is about banter, and I will say the lack thereof in this movie. There's very little. But
all right, well let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah,
the banter.
Yeah, I think there were, I want to say, exactly 4 moments where we might have written something down.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah. There's no. There's a dearth of. Yeah, there's not a lot to pick from in this movie, especially not what I would consider witty.
There was a single moment where all 3 of us laughed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Lady Sylvia is being completely not subtle to Jamie in disguise about her intentions.
Oh yeah.
And she mentions his own reputation, or rather the reputation of the Marquis of whom he is impersonating, and indicating like, well, I know you have this reputation, and also I'm down for it. And his response is, I did not anticipate this development.
Yes, I did write that one down.
Which he just says openly to her, which was a wonderful, kind of line to her in terms of, I did not anticipate you, being so open to my reputation. But also a great line to, us, the audience.
And I will say, actually, and this is a credit to the actor, there's this edge of mortification to it. Where you could tell he's just like, oh, I mean, yay? I mean, it's just this moment. And no, that was what I wrote down 2 pieces of banner, and I was really considering between that one and the go fetch the regent. He's safer where he is. Maybe you're right.
Oh, yeah.
And where he is in this case is the dungeon. Like,
where he is in this case is...
Go get the regent out of the dungeon. Hey, he might be safer where he is.
Yeah, right? Like that's...
Right, because this is when they're about to be, storming the castle and everything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The other things that I wrote down as possibilities were at the beginning where Jamie's being elusive about his identity and the guards are like, "Who are you, stranger?" And he's like, "Stranger will suffice."
I did like that line.
Yeah.
I did like that line.
Little John, a little bit later, asking him, "Are you known hereabouts?" And he's like, "Only as Deering Hood."
Yeah.
Even though that is not who he is, because it's...
But it's what people assumed he was.
And so that's what he's known as here. So I thought that was pretty clever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, there were a couple.
I liked...
exactly 4, as I said.
I liked when he got back from his liaison with Lady Sylvia, and it is heavily implied that he did, in fact, liaise with her. And he comes back to the bedchamber he's sharing with Deering, as his pretend wife. And she's like, where were you? And he's like, well, I had to maintain, the Marquis' reputation. And she says, but did you have to do it all over the palace?
That was pretty good. I forgot about that one. Yeah, okay. So there's a little bit more witty banter than I think we're giving it credit for.
Yeah, it wasn't rife with it, but it had a few moments.
Yeah, a few moments.
All right. So, the Merriest Man Award. This is when we select a member of the cast, aside from usually Robin Hood himself, but he was not actually in this film, of course, having been dead for 10 years, who we would select as a member of our merry band.
I know who I'm picking.
Well, and so this is a little bit tricky because previously, since we did 2 other Child of Robin Hood films, we said that they weren't eligible because they were the stand-in for Robin Hood in those movies. They were our lead.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were having to pick a side character.
However,
both of these main characters are side characters.
Right, and I'm going to pick Deering Hood, the actual Deering Hood, because she got sidelined, and I'm going to consider
she's arguably the title character. And she is the one who is the child of Robin Hood, but I feel because she was prevented from being the lead through most of the movie, we have to let her qualify for this category.
Good, I don't have to fight.
In which case, she's absolutely my pick as well.
Oh yeah, she's the only pick. She was great, and who else would you pick?
Yeah, there were really no other standout contenders either.
I mean,
Little
John's a distant second.
Yeah, Little John. I would not have picked Little John because he was so dismissive of her from the very beginning, not even giving her a chance to be Deering Hood.
Mm-hmm. And he was dopey.
He was completely dopey. I wrote down the guy in purple who jumped first.
All right, so Deering Hood is our unanimous pick as a member of our Merryman, child of Robin Hood, sneaking in there, and she's a crack shot with a bow.
Mm-hmm. Brave.
She's brave. She's cultured. She's daring. She's might not like taking the guise of the Marquis' wife, but pulls it off. She is never suspected as anything else. Even when he is uncovered and thrown in the dungeon, she actually is not also arrested. They still are like, well, she seems legit. She's probably fine.
Because they thought that the Marquis had betrayed them. And so, his wife's... She can still have her room.
And when he's in the dungeon, she's the one who gets him out by persuading Sylvia, by manipulating Sylvia into admitting to the liaison. No, it is 100%.
Yeah,
Deering Hood is the MVP.
She's got wits. She's brave. She's competent,
and she rocks a freaking outlaw outfit. Bycock and outlaw outfit.
Yeah, and still qualifies for the award by virtue of having been sidelined, even though she's the best character.
Qualified by technicality.
Yeah. And second place goes to the Merry Men in Purple, who jumped first during the ambush.
God. The ambush was so ridiculously stupid. Like, it's just not a bad scene, just like,
well,
what?
What was stupid about it was that, we have this tense scene of everyone with their bows aiming, getting ready, hiding
behind the bushes
as the guys on horseback are coming up.
The Duke de Roche's men who think they're going to ambush the Merry Men, but they've been outfoxed.
Right, and then even though we've had arrow sights on them, they don't shoot them as part of the ambush. They jump on them.
Well, they do shoot them after a bunch of them jump on it.
Yeah, about a half a dozen Merry Men jump out of the bushes and attack them, and then the archers start shooting.
Yeah, and it's like, do you not know how a bow ambush works?
Look,
I mean,
they've been out of the game for 10 years.
yeah, right? Except apparently not. I don't know. I don't know what they've been doing.
All right. So I think a lot of these questions we seem to be in pretty much agreement on, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of variety either for this one. And this is the question of how robbed were the rich?
Were they?
When we rate our films on a score of 1 through 10 to assess how well our heroes represent champions of the oppressed. And
can we go to 0?
No, I do say 1 to 10.
I'll give it an F.
to borrow
from Mike.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, if anything, they loop back around by only reinforcing the monarchy.
Right. And we don't know, at least in the movies, where it's such a ridiculous notion to have Richard I be presented as good King Richard and somehow a champion of the underpressed. But in the world of those movies, he is. And so while, especially to our modern sensibilities, the idea of helping, re-ferment the monarchy isn't great, at least they're saying this is a good monarch, and in the world of this movie, he is a good monarch.
Well,
so therefore, it is helping people for him to keep his throne as opposed to his treacherous brother who's going to overtax everybody. In this movie, we don't even get that. There's just some nebulous young king whose throne that we're protecting. We know nothing about him. We don't actually know that de Roche would be a bad king.
No.
There's nothing in there, like in all the other Robin Hood movies about Prince John overtaxing the population. There's nothing about de Roche doing that.
Nope. De Roche is not established as a bad or incompetent ruler. We don't see any peasants aside from...
That's what I was going to say. That the question almost doesn't apply to this movie because what people are there? There are no people.
Right?
There's the outlaws and the noblemen and the noblemen's soldiers.
There's the one dude, and I guess is
but we'll get to her.
Yeah, but there's the one dude, was it Miller or whatever? The one whose house they're in at the beginning.
The Squire?
The Squire. Like that's the closest thing we get to seeing a filthy peasant who isn't one of who wasn't one of the outlaw band. And the outlaw band are mostly a nameless mass of people.
There's like the few old men. There were 3 old men, one of whom died at the beginning.
Yeah.
We did have Alan Adale. If we weren't going to let Deering qualify, I guess I would have picked Alan Adale first.
He did kind of kick the out of people at the end.
Yeah.
And he was rocking the Wolverine male pattern baldness hair.
He had some serious mutton chops going on,
did.
too.
Yeah, he was rocking the hair.
We've had some really good Alan Adales, including, older Alan Adales.
Yeah,
in Bandit of Sherwood and Rogues of Sherwood, the 2 other Child of Robin Hood films. Alan Adale was an outstanding character in these movies. In this one, he was the guy who was also just kind of there, the last vestige of the old guard. Although they did do something clever with him, where they made us think that he was the traitor. Yes. They made us think that he was the one who was betraying the Merry Men. And I was definitely thinking that he wasn't doing it intentionally, that he was being coerced in some way. But that was actually the clever twist of the movie. More so.
That was the clever twist.
We'll get to that in high qualities. All right, robbed from the rich. They fail. There was no robbing that occurred. There was no. I mean, I can think about giving it a 2, just that we do know that DeRoche is a bad guy.
Well,
the regent seems to be a really good guy who was willing to work with the outlaws of Sherwood. He was friendly with them. And if he's the guy who is sort of the representative of the monarchy, he is a nicer person who is more on the side of the common people than DeRoche is.
Is he, though? Because we don't really know.
There are no common people. There's outlaws.
But he's hanging out with them. He's going to their house and
he's going and just hanging out with criminals, and that makes him guy.
Given that we're on the side of the criminals in this case, yes.
He's working with them to reinforce the monarchy. At no point is there any mention of he's helpful to the people anything.
In the world that we are presented, we are meant to think that he is a just person. We are meant to think that there is nothing that is particularly egregious or awful about the young king, that he is somebody who is worth maintaining the throne of. And we do know that while DeRoche might in fact not be a bad king or a bad ruler, he is not a good man.
That's true.
And so therefore preventing somebody who is not a good man from usurping the throne is at least something, and which is why I'd be willing to give it a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10.
I'll let you have your 1 instead of a 0.
I'm just saying there's no...
All right, F+.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's no evidence that Robert Earl of Chambers, or whatever the heck his name is, Chester, doesn't strangle puppies. I'm just saying we don't know anything about him.
We know that he had a brother that he loved.
Yes.
And we know that he's not trying to claim the throne for himself.
But he could also be one of those regents who really actually controls the power of the throne behind the throne by influencing the young king. We don't need
to make up...
I now have a whole head
We don't need to make up extra problems with the movie.
I have a whole head canon now.
All right. Low points.
Of which there are many.
The gross flirting is my low point.
That's the primary one. Yeah.
Gross flirting, a definite low point. Some of the fight scenes, the choreography could be distinctly better.
Yeah. It was overall okay.
And overall better. There were more good fight scenes than fight scenes. There were no bad fight scenes. But there were fight scenes.
The biggest problem, I think, with the fight scenes was the point you mentioned during the film while we were watching it, was how the music didn't match up to them.
Yeah, well, so one thing about the fight scenes, just to touch on it, some of the fight choreography, there were definite parts where you could tell the performers were waiting for a sword to be in a particular place to hit and everything. It was bad. It was bad stage combat. Yeah, but the scoring of this movie. So first of all, the actual refrain of the theme comes from a bugle call, and I cannot remember the name of it. But it's a military bugle call, and anybody who's familiar with them will pick up on that immediately. But the real problem with it is that whoever scored this movie singularly continued to fail to match the mood of the music they were scoring to a scene with the mood of the scene.
Yeah, repeatedly.
So a fight scene would happen, an exciting action scene, and they'd be playing this rather slow, ponderous,
kind of
melodic version of the main theme. And it's just, it ruins the mood of what you're watching. Like, it actually just pulls you out of it.
Fortunately for that dynamic, end of sword fight scene that we mentioned, the music did fit it.
Yes.
And that helped elevate it.
I did actually, I'm someone, I tune out the scores usually during movies, so I didn't notice it really, but I did actually notice it towards the end of the fight scene where there was this kind of driving repetitive notes that really did actually fit with the fight.
Yeah. It was helping amp up the drama.
Yeah.
It felt impactful. And I keep calling it a sword fight scene, but that almost doesn't do that fight justice. They use multiple different swords. They use the furniture. They use these pole arms. In fact, the villain isn't killed with a sword at the end. He's killed with the broken off haft of a halberd.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible, really.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that when we get to high points, which will lead right
low
into
points, low points. It was just such a good high point.
It was. No, like I said, this is one of those movies that if it was rescored, it would be a better movie. It just would be. Mm-hmm. Because this happens in more than one case. Because, in the ambush scene, it's just misscored. The scoring just really doesn't match the pace and excitement of things. But yeah, other than that, low points, the really creepy flirting, I believe our exact comment was, 1950s, why do you gotta be
so 50s?
So 50s.
Mm-hmm. Why you always got a 50?
Why you always got a 50? Because the sexism was just so cringy. I absolutely consider that a low point.
Oh yeah.
The utter just dismissal of this idea that Deering Hood could just be herself and lead a bunch of outlaws.
And then even after she'd really had opportunities to prove herself, and everybody was openly just saying, "Yes, Robin Hood has a daughter. This is this is who she is." There's no notion of and now she will go and lead the outlaws. It was still...
Oh, no, she gets married off to the lead guy.
The end of the movie is, she won't be Robin Hood anymore because she's
Deering Hood anymore.
Yeah, Deering Hood anymore because she's going to marry this other guy and she won't be a Hood anymore.
Yeah.
And she's just going to lose the name Hood now because she's going to get married to the dude.
Happy ending.
It's a happy ending because they kiss.
And get married.
Oh, can we mention low point of... I'm going to mention another low point, which is the kiss between Sir Jamie and Sylvia, which, oh my God, it's so...
It was the worst stage kiss I've ever seen.
It was like if you took two wooden masks, put them up against one another, and just kind of wiggled them back and forth. It was so weird. It was so weird.
So lacking in passion. The actors in general weren't that bad.
But I don't know if maybe they had a fight or something before that.
Yeah.
But man, it was to say they didn't sell it is actually understating how bad that kiss is.
Right.
It's so bad you laugh.
It was like if a kid taking two action figures and mushing their faces together and saying they're kissing now.
They're kissing.
Only it was two actual human faces being pressed against each other without any hint of emoting or movement of lips.
Yes, it was like, hello, Actorbot 3. We will kiss now. Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
So we should move on to high points, and so that we can talk about the sword fight scene some more. Because no, seriously, the sword fight scene was excellent, and it is. It's this knockdown, and it's long.
Yeah.
It goes on for a solid 3 to 5 minutes. I didn't time it, but it it's...
and they're fist fighting at multiple points. Yeah. They keep losing their weapons.
There's more than one chair thrown.
It reminded me a little bit of the James Bond fight in Die Another Day, the last Pierce Brosnan film, where there's a sword fight between him and the villain in this club in London that is well known because they keep going to larger and larger weapons. They're starting with fencing foils, and then they pick up sabers. And by the end, they've got these broadswords that they're hammering each other with. And it's actually a really fun scene in a very ridiculous movie. And this felt a little bit like that, but more organic and less forced. They were really taking the weapons that were on hand, not this stage progressively larger. It's no, there's just a chair here. Boom. No, there's this hand and a half bastard sword on the wall. That's what I'm pulling off and beating you with. I'm just punching you. I'm grabbing this guard's poleaxe from the side of the wall here. It was really felt like they were using just what was on hand. Yeah. It was dynamic.
Yeah, and the stuntmen were really selling it. I really felt that he was hitting that guy with that chair. Really going at it.
It didn't have as we mentioned earlier, like the heart that you would see from a brilliantly acted scene, but it was a well choreographed one and an intense one.
The fight scene it reminded me of is, although it is nowhere near as good as this fight scene, is my personal favorite fight scene of all time, which is the fight between Roddy Piper and Keith David in They Live. It's got that same kind of weight to it because, like, for instance, when they pick up the bastard swords off the wall, they're not moving quick. Like, they're swinging them, and you could see them taking, it's selling how much work it is to kind of throw this. And towards the end, you could see it seems like they're getting kind of tired, And like we said, they're ranging all over this kind of dining hall. So they're rolling over tables, they're fighting through a fireplace and kicking the fire at each other, and taking these broken...
They're going over and under the tables.
Yeah, over and under the tables. They're grabbing these pole arms and breaking them over each other and then trying to stab each other. And no, it's like I said, that fight scene is worth much of the rest of the movie to watch.
Most of the movie wasn't awful.
Yeah.
Makes that price of admission better.
Yeah.
But first, if somebody likes action movies, like medieval action movies and sword fight scenes, this film is worth watching for that.
And while there's not the intensity between the characters that there was in like the 38 Robin Hood, it still feels like a good payoff.
Yeah.
Because that was actually one of our complaints about, what was it, Rogues? With the Baron at the end, where like the fight scene doesn't even make sense that it happens. Mm-hmm. Like it's and it's done entirely quietly, and there's barely any music, and
there's no reason for those characters to be fighting.
This one, it feels more like a payoff that this is happening, not because of there's particular personal animosity, but because there is this kind of mounting sense of violence and everything that's happening. And I say there's not personal animosity, but I actually will retract that, because DeRoche rather was actually upset that his ally,
he believed
Dorchester, got killed.
His ally Dorchester had been killed by this guy. He had believed this guy was going to be a new ally, who then turned out to be somebody betraying him. Yeah, no, it really worked. There was a kind of ramp up of the tensions between them. Yeah.
And keep in mind, he killed Dorchester in front of DeRoche after DeRoche had told him to stop. And that was like a big plot point. That was actually like a major plot point. Mm-hmm. Because he ran him through because Dorchester had figured out who he was and actually blurts out a line of like, he's betrayed us. And this like lives in DeRoche's mind a little bit.
And initially has him arrested, but then this is when Deering gets Jamie in the guise of the Marquis out of prison, because they're able to play it off as no. Dorchester didn't think he was a traitor. Dorchester found out he was sleeping with Lady Sylvia. That's what it was about. And so while DeRoche was like, oh, this guy betrayed us. Oh, I guess he didn't betray us. He was just sleeping with my sister and my ally's fiancé, which is bad, but I guess not actually a betrayal to my cause. And I do want him to still be my ally, so I guess I'll let him out of prison. But Dorchester had said that thing about him betraying us. Maybe he really is a traitor. And then, by this point, the Merry Men are attacking the castle, and he's helping the Merry Men, and so he, of course, knows who he really is.
Isn't that when he brings in...
Yeah, that's when he brings in Alan Adale to torture him.
Right.
To prove his loyalty.
There is a whole scene where a captured Alan Adale is going to be tortured, and because he is suspecting Jamie as the Marquis of being a traitor, he says, well, you've got to be the one to torture him. Yeah. This will prove that you're an ally to my side. And he basically puts it off and hesitates long enough until the Merry Men arrive. Yeah, so he's testing that level of loyalty, and does feel solidly both betrayed and tricked by the time that they have that final confrontation. So yeah, the personal stakes are there.
At least one-sided.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, and he was, as I said before, he had been torturing Jamie's brother. Like,
that's true.
Jamie had plenty of reason to dislike this guy too.
Yeah, I mean, so even knowing those motivations, from all that, but getting back to comparing it to, the 38 Robin Hood, where with the personal emotionness during the fight and the scenes to have that conveyed there, and that it was kind of absent in this fight. I thought I just wanted to touch on again how that fight was really working, and in line with the lack of personal emotions, the end of the fight. It didn't linger on Darash's death. It just happens, and we don't even see Jamie's face. He just
he just walks away.
And it's
actually really.
It's really. I thought it was really impactful.
It was effective. Yeah,
it was
kind of like a stagger away.
It was really effective, where he just slowly just walks away up the stairs to the back. You just see his back walking away, and so it didn't have that.
I don't even know if it was the actor or the
who knows? It might have just been the stuntman, but it really worked with the tone of the whole fight, where it didn't shift tone to have some death scene or emotion that they weren't doing.
There was no dumb one-liner or anything like that.
No gloating.
No gloating.
Yeah, no, actually, that's the thing is like it when this movie shifts into its final act there, the tone changes. Like there's a tone change. Once like Deering is allowed to be Deering Hood, once they're getting into the castle, they end up kind of trapped in this secret tunnel that's flooding and everything, and they have to be saved by Ellendale. That was really good.
I wanted to mention that just real quick, how that was another high point for me. That there was this secret tunnel that got used multiple times. The villains were aware of it, and to help keep themselves from being attacked from the Merrymen coming in through the secret tunnel, they opened these sluice gates that led from the moat to flood that tunnel.
Yeah.
And the good guys weren't prepared for that. They got caught in this flooded tunnel. I mean, they got out of it again, obviously, but I thought that was a bit of, the villains actually got to be clever here. Yeah. That's nice.
I think that final act, up until the very end where it gets dumb again, it kind of felt like a different movie. Like the tone changes, the quality of the characters changes. There's the quality of the action changes. Like the action gets notably better in that last little bit. It almost feels like they handed it to a different director because it's that part is actually really good. Like that last act is solidly good, like you get.
They handed it to a different George.
Yeah, what do we count? 5 Georges on this movie? Possibly more.
One of them we might count twice because both his first and last name was George.
Right?
That was one of the writers.
So no, it's that's the thing is like while this movie slumps in the middle a bit and has some problems.
Slumps a bit. It's never
boring.
Paced, yeah.
It's never boring, and it's never plodding.
Yeah.
But it slumps a bit mostly in quality, not in necessarily pacing. But that last bit is actually quite exciting, quite fun, and worth sludging through the rest.
It was dynamic. Yeah. I'm really tempted to sometime real soon to just rewatch that final sequence with the storming of the castle where Deering is fighting off the captain of the guards with her bow as he's striking at her with the sword.
She just
tower steps and it's some good stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, like I said, I think that last act is really where the movie perks up and takes itself a little bit more seriously.
Another high point I really wanted to mention was the better and more interesting twist of the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even before the twist, where we knew there was a traitor, but we didn't know who it was, and just trying to guess who it was.
And the movie even tricked us. We knew that there was a traitor amongst the Merrymen because information was being passed to Darosh. And we were introduced to so few of the Merry Men, and via that kind of screenwriting law of conservation of characters, the traitor has to be somebody that's been introduced. And since oh shit, we only know Little John and Alan Dale, because Will Scarlet's already been killed, this one squire that we met earlier has already been killed, it seems like it's got to be Alan Dale, because Little John's the one who's kind of helping devise the plots that are being betrayed, and the one that we've seen the most of, and the one who we were not given reason to suspect. But Alan Dale we're seeing less of, and is even very suspiciously absent during an ambush scene, and he just kind of comes on as like, oh, sorry, I showed up too late. And Little John even says something about how I'm not even telling Alan Dale about our plans.
And then later on, when they have secret plans, they're like, don't tell Alan. Don't tell anybody, not even Alan, and especially not Alan Dale, because they really suspect him. But then, of course, there's another named character that we're introduced to, but we don't think of, because we kind of just dismiss them. And that is, of course, the Prioress. Yes.
The
Prioress, yeah. She hadn't been developed strongly as a character, but we had seen her before and been established like, oh, we're meeting at this priory, and it was this kind of background, oh, this Prioress is helping us, and it was this beautiful nod also to the ballads, where in the classic story of the death of Robin Hood, it is the Prioress of Kirklees who betrays him, and here we have a Prioress betraying the Merry Men, and she's just happens to be there assisting them, but of course, overhearing their messages at one point, right after Little John, and this is when he's being really kind of doofy, and saying, oh, we can't tell Alan Dale, we can't tell anybody. Hey, Prioress, will you write down this message for me? Yeah. It's really important. Nobody knows what this message is. And she's like, well, sure thing. I'll write on that.
She literally just turns around, goes into a room with the Falcon, and is like, I wonder what secrets you'll share tomorrow, my pretty. And it was just like... like, she was the closest thing we had to a hand-wringing mustache twirler in this whole freaking movie.
Yeah, but it caught us all by surprise. We were like, oh, man. Oh.
Yeah, no, it was that was actually, again, a more clever twist than the twist of the movie. Yeah.
So that was...
that's why this is a feminist film.
All right, say that again, but with a straight face.
No. This is not a feminist film. I want this to be clear.
I did... Yeah, I mean, I tried to write down my high point that, during Hood, she does her best.
She does.
During
Hood is a good character.
During Hood is a good character, and the thing I will say about her is that she is rightfully indignant that her accomplishments are overlooked and utterly dismissed. Because if you look at what she actually does in this movie, she's the one who's freaking, like, killing people. Who's like, no, I'm going to shoot that dude in that tree. Oh, look. Yeah, because like, literally everyone else is like, oh, man, if only we could hit him.
And she's like, oh, I've got a bow.
I've got a bow. Donk. Oh, look, he's dead. It's just like, or she's the one that's, oh, what, this needs done? I'm going to do it. Okay. Well, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's and there's a reason she's the merriest man.
It's an interesting quality, I think, in that while the movie was so sexist in so many ways, and definitely had that element of like, well, we can't actually let the woman be our main dynamic leading character, so we're going to have this other guy, Sir Jamie, be our primary lead and action star. They still let her, run around in trousers and sword fight people and shoot people and kill people. So she still wasn't ladylike in traditional ways, even though the movie wanted to reinforce a lot of patriarchal value.
Yeah, no, she, and that's part of the trouble with, number one, just kind of a lot of the stuff around her, but also one of the reasons I actually really chafe at that last little bit in the end, where she's just like, okay, now I'm gonna go get married to dude and have his little babies.
Yeah, the end was...
oh,
yeah, that was... As you were saying, the third act of the movie was really strong. It was action-packed. It was dynamic. It was interesting. And then that was just such a sour, weak note for the film to end on. Just, well, the king's safe. Long live... The regent's safe. Long live the king. And Deering Hood, you go marry the man now.
Yep.
Off you go.
Off you go.
Oh, yes, happily.
Yeah. Yeah, on that level, I'd kind of be interested to see what types of female leads in action movies might have been comparable at this time.
That's an interesting thing to look at.
There's... I brought up in the last episode, although I cut it out for time, the film Against All Flags, which was a few years before this one, that had Maureen O'Hare as a pretty dynamic action character in the film. She gets sidelined for a good chunk in the middle, but it's also like she is very clear and commanding, and she's introduced with discussions about how she killed a man in a duel, and in the climax of the film, she's sword fighting people alongside Errol Flynn and stabbing them, not being pushed off to the side.
Cool.
I feel like there's some other movies of this era that do have decently strong female lead characters, but I am blanking on them because it is at the time of this recording, it is past midnight. It's almost 1 a.m.
Yeah,
I'm
pretty tired. I think it's about time
so
to
I
wrap this
think
up.
yeah, we're gonna I plead the tiredness for not thinking of this, and also not having Max as an uncle too. When I was growing up to feed me awesome movies. Overall, my recommendation, for whatever it's worth for anybody, is this is definitely a Robin Hood movie or Robin Hood-esque movie that I'm not going to say don't miss it, but if you happen to get a copy of it out of the library or whatever, or see it there, nab it to add it into your quiver of Robin Hood movies that you've seen.
Yeah, you might have to do some hunting, really, to find this. You're not likely to just happen across it. But if you consider yourself an aficionado of swashbuckling movies, if you are somebody who really likes that as a genre, really seeks out good swashbuckling films, I think this one is worth watching for that experience.
Final thoughts, Momo?
I don't have anything to add that I haven't already said.
Okay. Well, on that note, we'll wish you all a very fond farewell. Good night, everybody. And may you let all the Deering Hoods of your life be themselves, for goodness sake.
Let little girls be awesome.
That's a great sentiment. I like that. Let the Deering Hoods be themselves.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, there would be an obscure t-shirt.
All right. Thanks again, guys. Good night. We love the idea of legacy. Perhaps it stems from a yearning for a sort of immortality, a desire to believe that there will be an extension of ourselves that continues to exist after we are no more. Or perhaps it's because it affords us the ability to imagine ourselves as the scions of our favorite characters, being the ones who have the torch of greatness passed on to them. It's also easier to sell audiences on a new character if there's already an identifiable brand attached, I suppose. When I started this project, I had no idea that there would be so many Child of Robin Hood movies out there. We've watched 3 of them so far, and I know that there will be at least 1 more to come. None of them are especially well remembered. And so far at least, it's all been for good reason. When approaching the idea of a character that's part of a legacy, there are a few difficult notions to balance. It's important to tap into what was meaningful about the original, while also making the new character distinct in some way. And I'm afraid that this hasn't really happened yet for the offspring of Robin Hood. Deering Hood had perhaps the most potential along those lines. She was presented as having lived at least most of her life away from England and spoke multiple languages, which would have given us a more cultured and worldly character than normal, while she was also shown embracing her father's sense of fairness. This really could have been the first film that succeeded in having a legacy version of Robin Hood and been the first with a female lead. But the choice to sideline her for most of the film meant that ultimately the idea of what it would mean to have a character really live up to Robin Hood's legacy just went absolutely nowhere. It's worth noting that while these low-budget films tend to lean into Robin Hood's legacy via his offspring, there have been other approaches as well. A notable example being when Jason Connery took up the mantle of the Hooded One in the third series of Robin of Sherwood in the 1980s. It was thoughtfully done, and I do tend to favor stories of legacies that are consciously selected, rather than being simply assumed by a kinship. Whether it's Antonio Banderas in The Mask of Zorro, Kamala Khan from the Marvel Comics, or Deering Hood, if you have a favorite story about a character upholding a legacy, please get in touch to tell us all about it. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, where we use the handle @IntoGreenwood. If you wouldn't touch social media with the stoutest of quarterstaffs, you can also email us directly via intogreenwood@gmail.com. Into the Greenwood is produced and edited by me, Thaddeus Papke. Our theme music is by Plastic 3, and it's all made possible by the generous support of our patrons on patreon.com/intogreenwood. Into the Greenwood is completely ad-free, and we're hoping to keep it that way. To do that, though, we do need your support. Contributions for as little as $1 per episode on patreon.com/intogreenwood go a long way towards keeping us on the air. You can also follow us on Patreon for exclusive bonus content, early access to episodes, and even our rather dashing Into the Greenwood t-shirts. If you're not sure about wanting to commit to a recurring contribution, but would be willing to, buy me a cup of coffee to fuel the late-night editing sessions, you can also leave a tip on ko-fi.com/intogreenwood. That's ko-fi.com/intogreenwood. And because we value both charity and conservation, 10% of all proceeds go to the selected top-rated foundation of Trees, Water, and People that implements sustainable solutions for providing clean water and food to impoverished communities around the world. If you're not exactly at risk of being one of the rich that Robin might rob from, we certainly understand, and even more happily encourage non-monetary contributions. Positive ratings and reviews will help us get noticed in Podfinder algorithms, and simple, good old-fashioned word of mouth goes a long way towards helping small, independent podcasts like this one. That's it for now. And so, once again, I find myself wishing safe travels to you, one and all, until our next journey together into the Greenwood. Do you want to try saying that again so I don't have to edit out your swearing?
He did kick the butt of a lot of people at the end.